this study. Today we look at some sea monsters and read some more from our friend Odysseus. You might remember the last time we read about Odysseus and his companions. We were in the land of the Lotus Eaters. I'll put a link up there. Today we look at passing through the Straits of Messina, and we'll have a look at some charts on avionics, have a little bit of background, and then we'll read from our Odyssey in English with a little bit of stylus sounds on the page. So sit back and relax and batten the hatches for sea monsters. The Strait of Messina, or the Stretto di Messina, is the narrow passage between the eastern tip of the island of Sicily, called Punta del Faro, and the western tip of Calabria in Italy, the Punta Pezzo. This strait connects the Tyrrhenian Sea to the north with the Ionian Sea to the south. The narrowest point is between Torre Faro and Villa San Giovanni, and it measures almost 2 miles, or a little over 3 kilometers across. At the city of Messina, the strait is a little over 5 kilometers wide, or 3.2 miles, and has a maximum depth of about 250 meters. The strong tidal currents in this strait create a unique marine ecosystem and bird migration transit, as well as a natural whirlpool associated with the Greek sea monsters Scylla and Charybdis. These sea monsters are famously encountered by Jason and the Argonauts, Odysseus and Aeneas. The many meteorological and maritime oddities that occur in and around this strait understandably gave rise to these challenges of ancient mariners. Things such as this whirlpool, the rocky coast, occasional fogs, occurrences of Fata Morgana, the volcano on Mount Etna, and mirages, as well as the Sirocco, the African southerly wind coming across the tip of Sicily, could all be very confusing or dangerous to these ancient mariners. Charybdis is the elder of these two sea monsters, the daughter of the primordial deities Pontus or Poseidon, ruling over the sea, and Gaia, ruling over the earth. Charybdis embodies a deadly, gigantic whirlpool. Scylla was possibly the daughter of Charybdis, or the daughter of Phorcys, an early god of the sea, and Cato, who were parents to many other monsters associated with the sea, including the Gorgons. Scylla is described as having 12 feet and 6 long necks, each with a head of sharp teeth. This corresponds to the rocky shoal or reef, where the deadly teeth could rip open the hull of a ship. Scylla and Charybdis are both described in several different myths as perhaps once having been beautiful women or water nymphs that were transformed into monsters by the caprices of the gods. In one of these myths, the sea god Glaucus is in love with Scylla. Wishing to woo her, he visits Circe to ask for a love potion. However, Circe herself was in love with Glaucus, so she hatched a plan to eliminate her rival. Instead of a love potion, unbeknownst to Glaucus, he ignorantly gave a poison to Scylla, transforming this nymph into a sea monster. Scylla and Charybdis live on opposite sides of the Strait of Messina, a distance said to be measured at less than the flight of an arrow. Thus no vessel could pass between Scylla and Charybdis unscathed. If she avoided one, the vessel would surely succumb to the other. The result of having to navigate between these two hazards, making a sacrifice one way or the other, inevitably entered proverbial use with the advent of more widely spread classical education in the Middle Ages. The medieval author Erasmus of Rotterdam discusses this quote: "Having escaped Charybdis, I fell into Scylla." And he offers 3 interpretations. Circumstances where there is no escape without some cost. One must then choose the lesser of 2 evils, or weevils for those fans of Patrick O'Brien's Jack Aubrey. It could refer to risks which are equally great, no matter the path chosen. Yet another interpretation is in circumstances where someone has gone too far in avoiding one danger and thus tumbles into the other opposite danger, one which has been used by the medieval poet Walter of Chatillon. Incidit in Scyllam cupiens vitare Charybdem. Into Scylla he fell, wishing to avoid Charybdis. references to these sea monsters in another poem of his criticisms, a story which would need its own video to do it justice. Let's see how Odysseus handles Scylla and Charybdis. We'll be reading from the Odyssey, Book 12, The Cattle of the Sun. Now when our ship had left the ocean river rolling in her wake, and launched out into open sea with its long swells to reach the island of Aia, east where the dawn is forever young, has home and dancing rings, and the sun is rising. Heading in, we beached our craft in the sands. The crew swung out on the low sloping shore, and there we fell asleep, awaiting dawn's first light. As soon as dawn with her rose-red fingers shone again, I dispatched some men to Circe's halls to bring the dead Elpenor's body. We cut logs in haste, and out on the island's sharpest jutting headland held his funeral rites in sorrow, streaming tears. Once we'd burned the dead man and the dead man's armor, heaping his grave mound, hauling a stone that coped it well. We planted his balanced oar aloft to crown his tomb, and so we saw to his rites, each step in turn. Nor did our coming back from death escape Circe. She hurried toward us, decked in rich regalia, handmaids following close with trays of bread and meats galore and glinting ruddy wine, and the lustrous goddess, standing in our midst, hailed us warmly. Ah, my daring, reckless friends, you who ventured down to the house of death alive, doomed to die twice over, others die just once. Come take some food and drink some wine, rest here the livelong day, and then tomorrow at daybreak you must sail. But I will set you a course, and chart each sea mark, so neither on sea nor land will some new trap ensnare you in trouble, make you suffer more. Her foresight won our fighting spirits over, so all that day till the sun went down, we sat and feasted on sides of meat and heady wine, and then, when the sun had set and night came on, the men lay down to sleep by the ship's stern cables. But Circe, taking me by the hand, drew me away from all my shipmates there, and sat me down, and lying beside me, probed me for details. I told her the whole story, start to finish. Then the queenly goddess laid my course. Your descent to the dead is over. True, but listen closely to what I tell you now, and God himself will bring it back to mind. First you will raise the island of the sirens, those creatures who spellbind any man alive, whoever comes their way. Whoever draws too close, off guard, and catches the sirens' voices in the no wife rising to meet him, no happy children beaming up at their father's face. The high, thrilling song of the sirens will transfix him, lolling there in their meadow, round them heaps of corpses rotting away, rags of skin shrivelling on their bones. Race straight past that coast, soften some beeswax, and stop your shipmates' ears, so that none can hear. None of the crew, but if you are bent on hearing, have them tie you hand and foot in the swift ship, erect at the mast block, lashed by ropes to the mast, so you can hear the siren's song to your heart's content. But if you plead, commanding your men to set you free, then they must lash you faster, rope on rope. But once your crew has rowed you past the sirens, a choice of routes is yours. I cannot advise you which to take, or lead you through it all, for you must decide yourself. But I can tell you the ways of either course. On one side, beetling cliffs shoot up, and against them pound the huge roaring breakers of blue-eyed Amphitrite. The clashing rocks, they're called by all the blissful gods. Not even birds can escape them, no, not even the doves that veer and fly ambrosia home to Father Zeus. Even those the sheer rocks always pick off one, and Father wings one more to keep the number up. No ship of men has ever approached and slipped past. Always some disaster, big timbers and sailors' corpses whirled away by the waves and lethal blasts of fire. One ship alone, one deep-sea craft sailed clear, the Argo, sung by the world when heading home from the Aetis shores, and she would have crashed against those giant rocks and sunk at once if Hera, for the love of Jason, had not sped her through. On the other side loomed two enormous crags. One thrusts into the vaulting sky, its jagged peak hooded round with a dark cloud that never leaves. No clear, bright air can ever bathe its crown. Not even in summer's heat or harvest time, no man on earth could scale it, mount its crest. Not even with 20 hands and 20 feet for climbing the rocks so smooth, like dressed and burnished stone, and halfway up that cliffside stands a fog-bound cavern, gaping west towards Erebus, realm of death and darkness. Past it, great Odysseus, you should steer your ship. No rugged young archer could hit that yawning cave with a winged arrow shot from off the decks. Scylla lurks inside it, the yelping horror, yelping no louder than any suckling pup, but she's a grisly monster, I assure you. No one could look on her with any joy, not even a god who meets her face to face. She has 12 legs, all writhing, dangling down, and 6 long, swaying necks, a hideous head on each head barbed with a triple row of fangs, thick set, packed tight, and armed to the hilt with black death. Holed up in the cavern caverns bowels from her waist down, she shoots her heads out of that terrifying pit, angling right from her nest, wildly sweeping the reefs. For dolphins, dogfish, or any bigger quarry she can drag from the thousands, Amphitrite spawns in groaning seas. No mariners can yet boast they've raced their ship past Scylla's lair without some mortal blow. With each of her 6 heads she snatches up a man from the dark-browed craft and whisks him out. The other crag is lower, you will see, Odysseus, though both lie side by side, an arrow shot apart. Atop it, a great fig tree rises, shaggy with leaves. Beneath it, awesome Charybdis gulps the dark water down. 3 times a day she vomits it up. 3 times she gulps it down, that terror. Don't be there when the whirlpool swallows down. Not even the earthquake god could save you from disaster. No, hug Scylla's crag, sail on past her, top speed. Better by far to lose 6 men and keep your ship than lose your entire crew. Yes, yes, but tell me the truth now, goddess, I protested. Deadly Charybdis, can't I possibly cut and run from her, and still fight Scylla off when Scylla strikes my men? So stubborn, the lovely goddess countered, hell-bent yet again on battle and feats of arms. Can't you bow to the deathless gods themselves? Scylla's no mortal. She's an immortal devastation, terrible, savage, wild. No fighting her, no defense, just flee from the creature. That's the only way. Waste any time arming for battle beside her rock. I fear she'll lunge out again with all her 6 heads and seize as many men. No, row for your lives, invoke brute force, I tell you. Scylla's mother, she spawned her to scourge mankind. She can stop the monster's next attack. Then you will make the island of Thrinacia, where herds of the sun god's cattle graze, and fat sheep, and 7 herds of oxen. As many sheep flocks, rich and woolly, 50 head in each. No breeding swells their number, nor do they ever die, and goddesses herd them on, nymphs with glinting hair, Phaethus Lampetie, born to the sun god Helios by radiant Neaira. Their queenly mother bred and reared them both, then settled them on the island of Thrinacia, their homeland seas away, to guard their father's sheeps and longhorn cattle. Leave the beasts unharmed, your mind set on home, and you may still reach Ithaca. Bent with hardship, true, but harm them in any way, and I can see it now. Your ship be destroyed, your men destroyed as well, and even if you escape, you'll come home late, all shipmates lost, and come a broken man. At those words, dawn rose on her golden throne, and lustrous Circe made her way back up the island. I went straight to my ship, commanding all hands to take to the decks and cast off cables quickly. They swung aboard at once, they sat to the oars in ranks, and in rhythm churned the water white with stroke on stroke, and Circe, the nymph, with glossy braids, the awesome one who speaks with human voice, sent us a hardy shipmate, yes, a fresh following wind ruffling up in our wake, bellying out our sail to drive our blue prow on, as we, securing the running gear from stem to stern, sat back while the wind and helmsman kept her true on course. At last, and sore at heart, I told my shipmates, "Friends, it's wrong for only one or two to know the revelations that lovely Circe made to me alone. I'll tell you all, so we can die with our eyes wide open now, or escape our fate and certain death together. For she warns we must steer clear of the sirens, their enchanting song, their meadows starred with flowers. I alone was to hear their voices, so she said, but you must bind me with tight chafing ropes, so I cannot move a muscle, bound to the spot, erect at the mast block, lashed by ropes to the mast, and if I plead, commanding you to set me free, then lash me faster, rope on pressing rope." So I informed my shipmates point by point, all the while our trim ship was speeding toward the Sirens' Island, driven on by the brisk wind. But then the wind fell an instant, all glazed to a dead calm. A mysterious power hushed the evening swells. The oarsmen leapt to their feet, struck the sail, stowed it deep in the hold, and sat to the oarlocks, thrashing with polished oars, frothing the water white. Now with a sharp sword I sliced an ample wheel of beeswax down into pieces, kneaded them in my 2 strong hands, and the wax soon grew soft, worked by my strength and Helios's burning rays. The sun at high noon, and I stopped the ears of my comrades one by one. They bound me hand and foot in the tight ship, erect at the mast block, lashed by ropes to the mast, and rode and churned the white caps stroke on stroke. We were just offshore, as far as a man's shout can carry, scudding close when the sirens sensed at once a ship was racing past, and burst into their high, thrilling song. "Come closer, famous Odysseus, Achaea's pride and glory, moor your ship on our coast so you can hear our songs. Never has any sailor passed our shores in his black craft until he has heard the honeyed voices pouring from our lips, and once he hears to his heart's content, sails on a wiser man. We know all the pains that the Greeks and Trojans once endured on the spreading plain of Troy, when the gods willed it so. All that comes to pass on the fertile earth, we know it all." So they sent their ravishing voices out across the air, and the heart inside me throbbed to listen longer. I signaled the crew with frowns to set me free. They flung themselves at the oars and rowed on harder. Perimedes and Eurylochus springing up at once, faster with rope on chafing rope, but once we'd left the sirens fading in our wake. Once we could hear their song no more, their urgent call. My steadfast crew was quick to remove the wax I'd used to seal their ears, and loosed the bonds that lashed me. We'd scarcely put that island astern when suddenly I saw smoke and heavy breakers, heard their booming thunder. The men were terrified. Oar blades flew from their grip, clattering down to splash in the vessel's wash. She lay there, dead in the water. No hands to tug the blades that drove her on, but I strode down the decks to rouse my crewmen, halting beside each one with a bracing, winning word. Friends, we're hardly strangers at meeting danger, and this danger is no worse than what we faced when Cyclops penned us up in his vaulted cave with crushing force. But even from there, my courage, my presence of mind, and tactics saved us all. And we will live to remember this someday, I have no doubt. Up now, follow my orders, all of us work as one. You men at the thwarts, lay on with your oars and strike the heaving swells, trusting that Zeus will pull us through these straits alive. You helmsman, here's your order. Burn it in your mind. The steering oar of our rolling ship is in your hands. Keep her clear of that smoke and surging breakers. Head for those crags, or she'll catch you off guard. She'll yaw over there. You'll plunge us all in ruin. I shouted. They snapped to each command. No mention of Scylla, how to fight that nightmare. For fear the men would panic, desert their oars and huddle down and stow themselves away. But now I cleared my mind of Circe's orders, cramping my style, urging me not to arm at all. I donned my heroic armor, seized long spears in both my hands, and marched out on the half-deck forward, hoping from there to catch the first glimpse of Scylla, ghoul of the cliffs, swooping to kill my men. But nowhere could I make her out, and my eyes ached, scanning that mist-bound rock face top to bottom. Now wailing in fear, we rowed on up those straits. Scylla to starboard, dreaded Charybdis off to port, her horrible whirlpool gulping the sea surge down, down. But when she spewed it up like a cauldron over a raging fire, all her churning depths would seethe and heave, exploding spray showering down to splatter the peaks of both crags at once. But when she swallowed the sea surge down her gaping maw, the whole abyss lay bare, and the rocks around her roared, terrible, deafening. Bedrock showed down deep, boiling, black with sand, and ashen terror gripped the men. But now, fearing death, all eyes fixed on Charybdis, now Scylla snatched 6 men from our hollow ship, the toughest, strongest hands I had, and glancing backward over the decks, searching for my crew, I could see their hands and feet already hoisted, flailing high, higher over my head. Look, wailing down at me, comrades riven in agony, shrieking out my name for one last time, just as an angler poised on a jutting rock flings his treacherous bait on the offshore swell, whips his long rod, hook-sheathed in an ox-horn lure, and whisks up little fish he flips on the beach break, writhing, gasping out their lives. So now they writhed, gasping as Scylla swung them up her cliff, and there, at her cavern's mouth, she belted them down, raw. Screaming out, flinging their arms towards me, lost in that mortal struggle. All of the pitiful things I've had to witness, suffering, searching out the pathways of the sea, this wrenched my heart most. But now at last, putting the rocks, Scylla and dread Charybdis far astern, we quickly reached the good green island of the sun, where Helios, Lord Hyperion, keeps his fine cattle, broad in the brow, and flocks of purebred sheep. Still aboard my black ship in the open sea, I could hear the lowing cattle driven home, the bleating sheep, and I was struck once more by the words of the blind Theban prophet Tiresias. And I can Circe too. Time and again they told me to shun this island of the sun, the joy of man. So I warned my shipmates gravely, sick at heart. Listen to me, my comrades, brothers in hardship. Let me tell you the dire prophecies of Tiresias. And I and Circe too. Time and again they told me to shun this island of the sun, the joy of man. Here they warned the worst disaster awaits us. Row straight past these shores, race our black ship on. So I said, and the warnings broke their hearts. So, my friends, we have sailed with Odysseus between Scylla and Charybdis through the Strait of Messina, escaped the sea monsters there, about which we were warned by Circe. I hope you are nice and relaxed, and that the dreams of the sea will carry you calm in mind and spirit to a sleep restorative or a day beautiful. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others.